A set is a unique collection of values or data. We're going to start by creating a set. So here we have creating sets. To create a set, you enclose values inside of a curly braces. So we can have something like norms is equal to, I'll provide curly braces. Inside the curly braces, we'll provide the values separated by commas. So we can have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can also have something like colors is equal to, here we're going to provide red. We can have white. We can have blue. So this is how we create sets. And like I said before, a set is a unique collection of values. Now, if I decide to provide duplicate values inside of this set, like I can include 1 again, then provide 2. Now let me print out the norms. So here we can have print norms. If I run this program, you can see that the duplicates have been removed. So when you want to create a unique collection or sequence of values, you use the sets. Now let's look at how we can create an empty set. So here we have empty set. To create an empty set, you may be tempted to think that you can do this by providing an empty curly braces. Something like norms is equal to an empty curly braces. This is not actually a set. Rather, this is a dictionary. We can easily verify this using the type function. So I can have print type norms. If I run this program, you can see we have class dict, meaning dictionary. So if you want to create an empty set, you use the set function. So we can have something like norms is equal to set. Then you provide a parenthesis. So this is how you create an empty set. And if I run this program, you can see we have class set. So if you want to create an empty set, you use the set function. Now let's look at how we can add or remove elements from a set. So here we have adding or removing elements. So let's start with adding elements in a set. And so we have adding element. And for this, we're going to be using the add method. So we'll have the add method. So I'll start by defining a set. So I can have norms is equal to, I can have 1, 2, and 3. Now I want to add another value or another element to this set. To do this, I'm going to have norms.add. Then I'll provide the value. So I can provide 4. Now let me print out norms before the addition. So here I can have print norms. Then after adding a new value, I'm also going to be printing out norms. So here we can have print norms. Now if I run this program, this is our original set. Then after adding an element to the set, this is the resulting set. So we use the add method to add elements to a set. Now let me add 4 again into the set. So I can have norms.add. Here I'm also going to be providing 4. Now let me print out the norms. So here we have print norms. If I run this program, we'll still have the same set. And the reason for this is because set only allows unique values. We're trying to add an already existing element into the set. And because sets only support unique items, the addition would not happen. Now let's look at how we can remove elements from a set. So have removing elements. And for this, we're going to be using the remove method. We're also going to be using the discard method. And finally, we're going to be using the pop method. So now I'm going to have nums is equal to, here I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to be using the remove method to remove an element. To do this, I'm going to have nums dot remove. Then inside the parentheses, I'm going to be providing the value or the element I want to remove. So let me have 2. Now let me print out the nums. So have print nums. I'm also going to be printing nums before the removal, so I can have print nums. Now if I run this program, this is our original set. Then after removing an element, this is the resulting set. So the remove method allows us to specify the element we want to remove in a set. Apart from using the remove method, we can also use the discard method. So instead of using dot remove, we're going to have dot discard. And here I'm going to be providing the element I want to remove. So I can have 3. If I run the program, you can see that we have successfully removed 3. Now let's look at the pop method. So here I'm going to have value is equal to nums dot pop. When you use the pop method, you are going to be returning that value that you want to remove, and at the same time removing the value from the set. But instead of removing the last element, it is going to remove the first element. Now let me print out the value. So here we have print value. If I run this program, you can see that the value we're trying to remove is 1. Now let me print out the set. So here we have print nums. If I run the program, you can see that 1 has been removed from the set. And our new set has 2, 3, and 4. So to remove elements from a set, you use the remove method, you use the discard method, and the pop method. Now let's look at some of the basic operations we can perform on a set. So here we have operations on sets. And for this, we'll have the union operation. We'll have the intersection. We'll have the difference. And we'll have the symmetric difference. So let's start with the union operation. So here we have union. When we're talking about union, we're talking about combining two sets together to form a bigger set. So here I can have S1 to be equal to, I'm going to have 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to have another set and I'll call it S2. And this I'm going to assign to 4, 5, and 6. To combine these two sets together, I'm going to be performing a union operation. So we can have something like result is equal to S1 dot union. Then I'm going to have S2. So here we have S2. Now let me print out the result. So here we have print result. If I run this program, it is going to combine the two sets together to form a bigger set. And as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. Then apart from using the union method, you can also have S1. I'll provide the pipe symbol, then the S2. So this is also going to perform a union operation. So if I run this program, you can see that this operation combined the two sets together. So this is a union operation. Now let's look at the intersection. So here we have intersection. Intersection simply means determining the similarity between two or more sets. If you want to determine the element that they share in common, you perform an intersection operation. Looking at these two sets, they don't have any element or values that they share in common. So here I'm going to be introducing 4. So this 4 is the value that the both sets share in common, and that is the intersection. To determine the intersection, I'm going to have x1 dot intersection. Here I'm going to provide S2. If I run this program, it is going to return 4. Then apart from using the intersection method, I can as well use the ampersand symbol. So here we're going to have S1, I'll provide the ampersand symbol, then I'll provide S2. If I run this program, it is going to return the intersection, which is the element or the value that the two sets share in common. Now let's look at the difference. The difference is more or less like the opposite of intersection. So here we have difference. If I'm looking at the difference between S1 and S2, I'm looking at the elements in S1 that are not available in S2. Then if I'm looking at the difference between S2 and S1, I'm looking at the elements in S2 that are not available in S1. So here I'm going to have S1 dot difference. Here I'm going to be providing S2. If I run this program, I'm going to have 1, 2, and 3. So these are the elements in S1 that are not in S2. Now, if I want to see the difference between S2 and S1, I'm going to change this to S2, and I'm going to change this to S1. If I run this program, we're going to have 5 and 6. So 5 and 6 are the values in S2, not available in S1. Then apart from using the difference method, I can as well use the minus operator. So here I'm going to have S2 minus S1. If I run this program, we're still going to have 5 and 6. If I want to get the difference between S1 and S2, I'm going to change this to S1 and change this to S2. Now, if I run this program, we're going to get the difference. Now, let's look at symmetric difference. So here we have symmetric difference. Symmetric difference has to do with the element that the both sets don't have in common. So if you look at these two sets, the only thing they have in common is 4. And what they don't have in common is 1, 2, 3, and 5, 6. So this is more or less like the opposite of intersection. To do this, I'm going to have S1 dot symmetric difference. Then I'll have S2. If I run this program, it is going to give me all the values that the both sets don't share in common. So even if I change this to S2 and change this to S1, I'll still get the same outcome. So this is how we determine the symmetric difference. So these are the basic operations you can perform on sets. We'll have the union operation, which involves joining two sets together. We'll have the intersection, which is determining the element that they share in common. The difference is what a given set do not have in common with another set. Then we'll have the symmetric difference, which has to do with the element or the values that the sets do not share in common. So this is basically how to work with sets in Python.